Hello, welcome to the Sprawl. Another
Hi.
week, another episode.
Yeah. What are we talking about this week, Pet Our Pops?
Yorgos Lanthimos. We have both watched a film by him earlier this week,
Mm-hmm.
and last night I watched his latest movie in the cinema,
And what's that called?
The Killing of a Sacred Deer.
And who's in it?
Who's in it? Oh god. It's Colin Farrell, it's Nicole Kidman, it's a bunch of people. You know, cool people though.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I was just gonna say, did they do a good job?
is it, yeah, I think mostly. Oh god, his films are, like, it's so weird. The people act into the weird way in them. So I guess let's. How do I describe this film?
I don't know. Start by telling the story
Right,
without
without
spoiling
spoilers. Yeah, definitely not spoilers because Ollie hasn't seen this, so
it. It's true, I haven't.
I'm gonna spoil it for you. So basically, we're following a surgeon played by Colin Farrell, and this is the second film I believe with Colin Farrell that that Yorgos Lanthimos has worked with him in. The first one being The Lobster, but so he's a surgeon and he's talking to this boy who doesn't seem he's not a part of his family. We don't really know why he's talking to him or who this boy is, and this is just how the film begins immediately. And everyone is so weird in this film. Everyone talks like robots. They talk sort of like this with these breaks
But it's
and
clearly
rhythm.
on purpose, is it?
Yes, it is clearly on purpose.
Okay, well, I'm glad I didn't see it. It's really annoying me already.
Well, no, it works really well actually because the film is it's very atmospheric. It's not that dissimilar from Dogtooth. It's a bit more energetic than Dogtooth, which wasn't,
I mean, Dogtooth was pretty energetic.
So this is more so. But okay, so this person, this surgeon is talking to this boy, and I'm not sure how much further I can take this without spoiling it. Very soon we start to realize that this boy is clearly there for a purpose, and it's quite an ominous purpose, possibly. And the way that the film reveals this, normally you have a slow brooding scene when they're slowly like revealing what the whole point of the film or this big twist. In this film, they're like, you know what? Fuck it, let's just get it over with. So here is what's gonna happen. This is the premise of the film. In one sentence, go. Seriously, like this, just really quickly, just say everything, and then we just move on. So our main characters, Colin Farrell's family, starts getting slow one by one this weird disease.
Yeah.
Which begins with them just not being able to move or use the legs, so they just collapse. And naturally, him being a surgeon, he goes through the whole procedures in the hospitals. He does all the scans and everything, but no one can explain it. Everyone seems to be fine, but clearly they're not fine, and it's gonna get worse. And this is never explained what it is, but I've heard that the story is based on not maybe in Greek mythology or just a old Greek tale. So there is something sort of not spiritual but supernatural about it.
Right.
And you have the juxtaposition of a supernatural event happening to people who are very science-oriented, they're very logical and rational, and suddenly there's this force that's following them. Are you bored already?
No.
Does it sound like a film you would like to watch?
It sounds interesting. I'm sure I would like to watch it. Apologies today, Sprawl listeners. I have had a very long day of being super acty, being an actor, and I'm very tired, so I'm letting Petar take the reins today. So I'll try when we get to Dogtooth in a bit. I will happily supply more voice, but as
Yeah.
you can probably hear, I have no oomph.
Perfect. Let's get a freak on and get all art house in here.
Yeah, let's do it.
It's been a long time coming after all the Marvel stuff.
It's true. We have talked a lot about heavy pop culture, but to be honest, that stuff's important. But also, like I think films that there are a lot of films at the moment that are trying to break trends and break tropes, and I'm really enjoying those films, quite a lot. We also watched 1922 this week, and that was really good. It's based on a
Yeah.
Stephen King novella. It was a sort of classic Stephen King horror film. In that you had your someone writing, and then some horrible circumstances happen that are sort of based in reality, but also have some supernatural elements, and that was great. Sorry. Anyway, to go back to the
The Killing of the Sacred Deer.
The Killing of the Sacred Deer, which is a ridiculous title.
Yeah. What's the title invoke to you without knowing what it's all?
It sounds like it's a film about ritual.
How? Why? Is it like an English thing?
Killing of the Sacred Deer. No, it just it sounds like a description of a sacrifice.
It's very interesting. Not that there is a ritual in the film, but there's something very ritualistic about it. Atmospherically, it sort of made me think of The Shining.
Mm-hmm.
Remember in Shining, there's a lot of time with just people just walking through this set, and the camera's following them, and it's all like very.
Well,
ambience.
my thoughts on The Shining, and I'm one of those strange people that is incredibly bored by The Shining. I fall asleep every time I watch it, and I've sat and watched it properly with Petar, and it was slightly more interesting, but it's still boring as all hell, as far as I'm concerned.
I remember the best time I had watching The Shining was me and another big Kubrick fan. We were watching it with a mutual friend who was studying with us, and she didn't. She wasn't that into film. She didn't know who Kubrick was. I'm like, okay, girl, we're watching The Shining. And then whilst watching The Shining, she asked a question about the difference between a dolly and a zoom and what's the other thing? Just a camera movement. So me and my friend, we spent the whole film telling her what kind of shot each shot is as we went on. And then it almost became like a competition who could figure out first if it's a zoom or a dolly.
Well, the thing about The Shining is it's a great film to watch if you're trying to learn to make films, because everything in that film is considered. But that doesn't necessarily make it a great film to watch as a viewer. And I think atmospherically speaking, the film does do a lot of great stuff, but it doesn't really match up. Like, in terms of the pacing, it doesn't match up to what I think was King's original idea. He famously doesn't like the Shining.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine writing a book, having it made into a film, and watching it and going, ugh, this is awful, and feeling happy about it.
I mean, no offense to Mr. King, I'm pretty sure the film is better than the book.
Well, have you read the book?
No, it's like I'm not basing this statement on anything except for the fact that when people want to adapt a film, a book into a film, you can go with the regular route of just adapting. Like Cosmopolis is literally a page-to-page adaptation of the book, but Kubrick took it a step further. The films that we're making aren't adaptations anymore; they're his films. The Shining, it's not really Stephen King's Shining, only in small elements, but it's more a Kubrick film. Same with was Barry Lyndon based on something? I guess it must have been. Was it original? I don't remember. But like Clockwork Orange and all those films.
Well, it's funny because my dislike of The Shining has nothing to do with Kubrick, because I love A Clockwork Orange. It's one of my, it's one of those films that I watched before I should have watched it, and like when I was growing up, and it's great visually, it's exciting, but I mean it's based on a book, and you know I'd say a lot of people would probably argue the book is better than the film. I've seen the play, I haven't seen the I haven't read the book, but I think that the reasons that A Clockwork Orange works on film, especially with Kubrick's style, is that everything is so epic, everything is so important, every shot is so important and tells a story.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's true of The Shining.
You should reconsider before you continue on that.
No, the reason I don't think is because everything goes on too long, and you know how I feel about things that go on too long. Now you can show a lot in a 5-second shot of something.
Yes.
You don't have to go on for 40 minutes wandering around the same corridors doing the same old. You know, I mean, the acting in The Shining, Jack Nicholson is obviously great. The kid is actually really good watching it in hindsight, but you know, you've got the caretaker guy. Who's that? The black guy.
The other guy with The Shining.
Yeah, the guy with the shinning. Oh, I'm not gonna do a Scottish accent. But you know, like, I think a good horror story is very reliant on the characters, and unfortunately what Kubrick missed with The Shining is that, yes, it was creepy, but he missed out on making the characters particularly believable and particularly scary on their own rights. Like, without the music, without the long panning shots, is that film scary? I don't know, I don't think so. But film is a visual medium, you know, so I understand that.
Well, I mean, painting, photography, all that's a visual medium. Film, to me, it's not that much about the visuals. I mean, I'm a sound guy, of course I would say that. But it's, you know, to me, it's in the name, motion picture. It's about something moving. It's about capturing movement. And that's what makes Shining interesting. I mean, I've seen like these ambient films where we have a static shot for ages and very few things happen in it. And sometimes with the movement in that static image is engaging enough, it's fine. But The Shining is always moving. And actually, to bring it back to The Killing of a Sacred Deer, the reason I even brought up the comparison is because the camera work is very similar. I mean, it's not as long. It's in much short segments, but there's so many shots of just the camera following a character walking. The wide angle steady cam, but from really odd angles, like kind of like from above, almost like they're like a flying behind the actor.
Right. Because as a filmmaker, why would you want to make every shot a standard shot? Like, of course you're going to want your funny angles and your... I mean, it sounds like this film is quite a lot about the atmosphere as well. So, you know, of course, there is going to be some funny, dodgy bits and pieces to make it more interesting than your average film.
Yeah.
And this director isn't someone who, you know, does boring stuff. But we'll get to Dogtooth in a bit. Carry on, sorry.
Right. What was I saying anyway about the shots? Yeah. No, it's not. I don't think it's just for the sake of style or for fun. I really think that it's implying something, and I think that this is the element that harkens back to the Greek story, because I didn't know that watching the film, and there was nothing in the film to really show the supernatural thing, except for now in hindsight, when I think about those shots and about the brooding atmosphere, and it kind of implies that this is the supernatural implication, because the rest of the film is really straight. They just sort of they don't even like blink or battle an eye at the weirdness that's going on. They're just like, yeah, this is how it is.
Mm-hmm. So is this maybe in an alternate universe where these things just happen, as opposed to set in our universe where, you know, strange things are strange and therefore need investigation?
It's possible. There's some elements of it that reminds me of Drag Me to Hell.
Okay.
Maybe that will give you some... What I mean, there's a very few moments which sort of break or contradicts the world itself. I'm not going to get too into it. There's a parking lot scene, which watching it, I was so confused. I'm like, what is going on here? What is he trying to say? But the atmosphere is cool and it's great and it's very horror. I wouldn't say that the film is particularly horror, but the music cues certainly are, and the atmosphere it's building, and this is great like score behind it. It's almost sounds like thunder coming out, like or like slowly like revving an engine, right? But after a couple of times of hearing this, suddenly they play a note that's a bit higher, and it's revealed that sounds actually an accordion. And I was like, shut up. Accordion? We're listening to accordion? That's the basis for horror film? Like, what is this? It was pretty cool.
Accordions are pretty horrific, so why not? But was it a horror film? Would you call it a horror film?
Would you call Cloverfield 10 Cloverfield Lane a horror film?
Oh, that film straddles so many things, but yeah, I mean, it's a horror film to begin with, and then it gets a bit ridiculous by the end. But like the whole thing is a horror film right up until the climax. The climax of the climax.
It's not that dissimilar from there's something. So in Dogtooth, it was quite clear that what we're supposed to we're watching is actually a metaphor. So there's the whole of Killing of Sacred Deer feels like a bigger metaphor for something. I haven't quite figured out what yet, but I would say that if you're afraid of horror films, then maybe this can be a bit tough. But it's not horrific in the sense that there won't be any jump scares or anything weird like that. It's more similar to like a drama, because we're slowly being put in a situation which is quite disturbing. And this, I'm not going to say what the situation is, but basically our main character is in a position of power, and it's very interesting to see how his family and how everyone deals around him, because no one takes a second to think about this what we're doing right now is really fucked up, like this is bad, this is horrible. Instead they just all flocking, like trying to show the best side, and it's so disturbing. This one scene in particular, which a friend was watching with, kept talking about, where they're washing the knee of one of they're washing the knee of one of the daughters, and the daughter is just telling her father how much she loves him, and like what all the things she's willing to do for him and so on. And that it was pretty disturbing.
So is it how much more or less disturbing is it than Mother?
No,
Exclamation mark.
And Mother exclamation mark. That's like overwhelming. After watching Mother, I was like, I couldn't really speak.
Yeah, I needed a day to recover after Mother. That was.
So this is not like that. In fact, I didn't find it that disturbing. The situation and the story is fucked up, but I wasn't that disturbed by it, because like The Shining, it also had this really cold feel to it and very distant feel to it. I was never put in a position of the characters. I was always like watching them from outside. So, and their robotic monotone delivery also didn't help me like really fall in there.
Well, I mean, maybe, to some degree. What was I? I think we were watching it. We were watching something, and it was actually about The Shining. Not to bring it all the way back there, but effectively, this idea that the creepiness of anything is how it's something that should be normal, but is slightly outside of reality. It's like that.
The uncanny valley.
The uncanny valley. But when you see there's that robot that has just been made a citizen of Saudi Arabia, and I can't remember her name, but she is really in the uncanny valley, because they've managed to program this robot with an actual human face to react in the right way or the wrong way, but she doesn't look real, but she does look real at the same time. So it's like your body has an automatic reflex of, I don't trust this thing and therefore you find it horrible and you find it creepy. And yeah, the uncanny valley is a very powerful tool. So maybe that was what the whole film was doing with the. I mean, I haven't seen it, but with the delivery of the lines and the accordion.
Yeah.
It's that stuff that should be normal but just doesn't quite feel right.
Okay, so I've said enough about this. I think it's worth a watch. I wouldn't say it's good. Maybe even great, and maybe after a couple of days I'll think it's great, but it's not as good as Dogtooth, which is what I want to talk about now. And this is a film which I remember it won when the year came out. It won the best film at Stockholm Film Festival. So the Swedes like it.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, but you can sort of see why the Swedes would like it. The film itself is based on this idea of a isolated family, who are like they are living their way, but their whole unit is based on lies. And the father knows, and the mother knows as well, but she seems to.
So what's the synopsis?
God, it's hard to say really. I think I just said it, didn't I? It's like about a family that is not normal.
Well, the point is that it's about a controlling father, and he has his children who are at adult age, but they don't know that a world exists outside of their garden.
Yeah, they're still children. They still treat them like children.
Like they never grew up.
Like they never grew up. Like they the father does things to cater to the needs of his children, but he doesn't really appreciate what those needs mean. And yeah, it's sort of falls apart in places, and then he tries to bring it all back together, and it's like the thing I loved about the film watching it is how uncomfortable it made you feel without really trying. Because again, it comes back to this idea of normalcy, and like, what is a normal family? There's no such thing as a normal family, but everything in this film that should be normal isn't. And it sort of goes into the realms of taboo that and things that shouldn't be being done because they don't know any better. Sorry, what?
This reminds me of remind me of the dinner scene in Dogtooth, which is great, where they're just having dinner and just talking, casually, but all the things they're saying are so weird because they don't know the real meaning of the words they're using.
Oh yeah.
It's like,
yeah, what is it? What's a zombie? Oh, it's a little yellow flower. That's that. So, and then they refer to little yellow flowers they find in the garden as zombies.
Mom, I found these 2 zombies. I like, could you please hand me the phone? And they hand them the salt.
Yeah, but it's true, and like this because their view of the world is only from the back garden. I mean, there's a pretty horrific scene in it, and that in which involves an animal coming into the garden, and they've never seen an animal before, and things happen. Consequences are led on from there. But also, when they see aeroplanes flying above, their parents drop model aeroplanes into the garden, so they think that those planes that were above were actually just like
small toys
dropped out of the sky.
So yeah, they hear an airplane and they're like, oh, I wish it would fall down. Which actually, I think the sound design in Dogtooth was much more intriguing than in Killing Sacred Deer, which was, horror music galore and creepy ambience, and really there's a lot of silence in it. In Dogtooth, there wasn't ever any silence, because even there's small, longer scenes where there's just quiet, almost just room tone, very little ambience. We start hearing in the distance an airplane coming in, and just last there for the whole scene, and it's very cool that he uses that. What's
interesting about Dogtooth as well is the way that sound was used to increase the intensity of the violence. Because I mean it's quite a violent film, but there are moments there which, if done by anyone else, like for any other purpose, pardon me, would have been done, with a over the top sound effect. But the sounds were so real; they were so thuddy. They were just, it was like smack, 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 as opposed to like squelch, 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 or, and it was more about, you felt the impact on the human as opposed to feeling the impact on the object hitting the human.
Yeah. Oh God, there's a scene in this horrific near the end. Do you know which one?
Yeah.
It's God, but that film, it's a pretty. It goes into dark and disturbing places, but it looks very bright and colorful and pastel and like really light.
I mean, that's one of the things that is quite jarring about it, is that you've got that sort of, you have that, like, you sort of have fun with them while they're having fun. And like, you quite like these kids, they're these childrolts, but they're good people, and they are just living in a world that they know from the one source of information they have, which is their father. And so it's just how twisted that becomes, and how twisted that is. You didn't say what was playing music-wise, by the way. Maybe you should.
Right. So right now we're listening to John Lennon's first solo album, which is Plastic Ono Band, I believe it is. Great record.
Mm-hmm. I love how you looked at me like I was going to know.
You don't recognize John Lennon's voice?
I do, but I don't know that. But you looked at me like I was going to know the name of the album.
Do you know about Primal Scream Therapy?
Yes.
So he got really into it thanks to Yoko, and the first song that we heard, Mother, is basically his take on that, where in the end he just keeps screaming louder and louder and louder the lyrics as a sense of therapy.
Mm-hmm. And what were we listening to at the beginning?
The same album, but the song Mother.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go then. Yeah. Cool.
Yorgos Lanthimos. What can we say about him? He's Greek.
I hadn't heard his name before. Well, I think we watched the trailer for the Killing of the Sacred Deer.
Yeah, and then I was like, "Hey, let's watch Dogtooth."
And then like we watched Dogtooth, and then we were gonna go. I was meant to go and see the film. I didn't. But like, it was. It was a surprise, because like Petar quite often shows me things I haven't seen before or haven't heard of before, and I'll generally enjoy them. Not all the time, but generally. And yeah, this is one of those people that I think it's worth looking into and having a research of, because he's a very interesting filmmaker.
Yes, and actually he's had in between Dogtooth and Killing Sacred Deer, there's two major films that he's released: The Alps, which neither of us have seen, and The Lobster, which is a comedy by him, which neither of us have seen. Dogtooth is also comedic at points, and so is Killing Sacred Deer in a darker way. But going back, Dogtooth felt like he had so much purpose. The framing was impeccable. Everyone moved so gracefully into position.
Well, it was so simple, and it was only based in one location, so I guess that makes it easier to do that.
But like Killing Sacred Deer, it's mostly and in one location, but the thing about it is that every shot, if it wasn't moving, it was zooming in, zooming out, zooming in, zooming out. And I love zooms to death, but like, you gotta earn the zoom. You can't just use it willy-nilly and just hope for the best. No. You gotta, like, when the zoom is done correctly, the audience won't realize until halfway through. There is actually one good zoom in there, which because the zoom is used to reveal another character, which is a technique I love. But just zooming and not revealing anything, it's just like to add some more, like, I don't know, visual tension. It's it's becoming a trend, and I'm against it.
Well, good. I'm sure that the people against that particular thing will be in contact to invite you to a protest sometime soon.
Right.
Right. Cool. So, yeah, I think we've had a very interesting discussion today. You should watch Dogtooth. You should watch The Killing of the Sacred Deer. You should watch The Shining. You should watch 1922. Just as a point, bringing it back to these like one shots which Kubrick does. Quentin Tarantino does a similar thing with one shots, in that he will take a very long scene and shoot it as one, and I think that he does a much better job of it than Kubrick, actually. But that's maybe a discussion for another time. So,
yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if there are any one shots in The Shining, but
well, no, but these long ambling shots, not one shots, but
oh,
atmospheric.
quick before we
shots.
finish,
Yeah.
what's your favorite Tarantino film?
Oh God, probably Kill Bill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mine's Jackie Brown. We should have a comparison of them because they're like polar opposites in his.
No,
like,
it's true, but I do like
filmography.
a strong woman, kicking butt. Like it's one of my things.
Yes.
All right, cool.
Yes.
Well, thank you for
Adios.
listening.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.